Just imagine this for a moment. You wake up at the same time every morning. The same neighbors smile and wish you good morning. The same streets, the same stores, the same office, the same routine. It all feels perfectly normal. But one day, a massive studio light suddenly falls from the sky. Your car radio mysteriously begins broadcasting your every movement in real time. People around you start repeating the same actions over and over, as if they're following a script. Slowly, you begin to feel that someone is watching every breath you take, every smile you make, and every decision you choose. Now ask yourself one question. What if one day you discovered that your entire childhood, your family, your friends, your marriage, your career, even your memories, were all part of the world's biggest television show, watched live by millions of strangers every single day? Would you choose the painful truth, or stay inside a beautiful lie where everything feels safe? That is the terrifying question at the heart of the Truman Show. This is far more than a movie. It is a powerful exploration of freedom, identity, media manipulation, and the nature of reality itself. By the end of this journey, you'll realize that this story isn't just about Truman. It may also be about us. The story takes us into a small, peaceful, picture-perfect town where the sun rises at exactly the right moment every morning. The streets are always spotless. Every neighbor greets you with a warm smile, and life seems completely free from crime, chaos, or suffering. This town is called Sea Haven, and it is home to Truman Burbank, an ordinary man whose life appears to be the definition of happiness. Every morning, he cheerfully greets his neighbors with his iconic phrase, "In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night." He enjoys breakfast with his wife, drives to his insurance job, passes the same friendly faces, the same traffic, the same coffee stand, and follows the exact same routine day after day. At first glance, it looks like the perfect life everyone dreams of. But this is where the film begins its first psychological trick. A world without uncertainty, without genuine danger, without real conflict, and without unexpected change may appear comforting, but it may also be completely artificial. Truman has no idea that every smile, every conversation, every emotion, and every step he takes is being recorded by thousands of hidden cameras. His wife isn't truly in love with him. His best friend isn't loyal because of friendship, but because he's playing a role. The entire town is nothing more than a gigantic stage where everyone is acting, except one person. Truman is the only real human being in this carefully constructed illusion. He believes he is making his own choices, while in reality, every fear, every opportunity, and every dream has been designed by someone else. He believes he is making his own choices, while in reality, every fear.
And through this seemingly perfect world, the film quietly asks one of its most unsettling questions. If your life feels so comfortable that you never think to question it, are you truly free? Or are you simply living inside a system that has already written your story? Every perfect lie eventually reveals a flaw, no matter how carefully it has been constructed. Truman's world has finally reached that breaking point. The town he has always believed to be real suddenly begins producing events that no rational person can easily explain. One ordinary morning, as Truman walks out of his house, a massive studio spotlight crashes from the sky and lands just a few feet away from him. Printed on the light is the label Sirius, 9 Canis Major. Moments later, the local radio calmly announces that an aircraft accidentally dropped a piece of equipment. But the audience knows the truth. It wasn't an airplane at all. It was one of the lights from the enormous television studio that contains Truman's entire world. For the first time, a dangerous question enters his mind. Was this really an accident? But this is only the beginning. A few days later, while driving through town, Truman's car radio unexpectedly switches to another frequency. Instead of music, he hears voices that sound like security personnel describing his every movement in real time. He's approaching the intersection, now turning right, he's slowing down. Within seconds, the signal disappears, but the damage has already been done. How could strangers possibly know every step he is taking? From that moment onward, Truman begins observing his surroundings differently. He notices the same people walking the same routes at exactly the same time every day. The same woman carrying flowers. The same cyclist. The same buses. The same smiling faces repeating identical routines, as though the entire town is trapped inside an endless loop. For the first time, he realizes that Sea Haven doesn't feel alive. It feels choreographed, as if every person is waiting for invisible instructions before making their next move. Here, the film delivers one of its most powerful psychological ideas. A lie remains invisible until someone begins asking questions. The moment you recognize repeating patterns, your understanding of reality starts to collapse. Truman's greatest strength isn't intelligence or physical courage, it's curiosity. He refuses to accept the world exactly as it is presented to him. And in that moment, an ordinary man unknowingly begins his rebellion against a system that has controlled every second of his life since the day he was born. Mark on his heart that he could never truly forget it. That moment was his meeting with Sylvia. On the surface, it appears to be nothing more than a simple love story. But in reality, it is the emotional turning point of the entire film. Sylvia is one of the very few people involved in the television production who can no longer accept the cruelty of the lie.
Sylvia is far more than Truman's lost love. She becomes the first spark of freedom, the first voice of truth, and the first ray of light breaking through the darkness of the artificial world built around him. Until now, we've experienced this story through Truman's eyes. But at this point, the film finally introduces us to the man behind the curtain, the architect of the entire illusion, Christoph. He is far more than a television producer. In his own mind, he is a creator, a godlike figure who has built an entire world inside a massive dome. Every sunrise, every rainstorm, every traffic jam, every smiling neighbor, and every tiny detail of Truman's environment exists only because Christoph allows it to exist. From the very moment Truman was born, his entire life became a live television program. His first steps, his childhood, his first love, his marriage, his happiness, and even his deepest pain were transformed into entertainment for millions of viewers around the globe. The most disturbing fact is that Truman never agreed to any of it. His privacy, his freedom, and his entire existence were sold without his knowledge or consent. Yet Christoph sees nothing immoral about what he has done. In his mind, he has given Truman a perfect world, a place without crime, without war, without poverty, and without the uncertainty of real life. To Christoph, control is not cruelty, it is protection. And this is where the film asks one of its most profound ethical questions. Is it acceptable to take away someone's freedom if you can guarantee them a safe and comfortable life? Is security more valuable than liberty? To maintain this illusion, Christoph even manufactures Truman's fears. By staging the fake drowning of Truman's father during childhood, he implants a lifelong fear of the ocean, ensuring Truman will never attempt to leave Sea Haven. His wife, his best friend, his neighbors. Every relationship is carefully scripted by actors whose only job is to keep Truman inside the illusion. Meanwhile, millions of viewers around the world adore the show. They laugh with Truman, cry for him, and emotionally invest in every moment of his life. But the film quietly turns its attention toward the audience as well, asking an uncomfortable question. Are the viewers innocent, or are they also responsible? If millions willingly consume the private life of a man who has never given his consent, aren't they participating in the same injustice as the creator himself? At this point, The Truman Show stops being only Truman's story. It becomes a mirror held up to society itself, a warning about a culture where privacy can become entertainment, emotions can become products, and human freedom can be sacrificed for ratings. That is precisely why the film feels even more relevant today, in an age dominated by social media, reality television, and constant surveillance. Until this point, Truman's mind had been filled with suspicion. But now, suspicion transforms into certainty. He no longer believes that the strange events around him are accidents. He realizes that an invisible force is controlling every aspect of his life. And at that moment, he makes the most important decision of his life, to fight back against the system that has controlled him since birth. Truman begins breaking his routine. He leaves work unexpectedly, changes his driving routes without warning, and makes completely unpredictable decisions. But every time he tries to leave Sea Haven, the world seems to move against him. Massive traffic jams appear out of nowhere. Roads are suddenly closed for construction. Officials announce a fake nuclear leak, forcing everyone to turn back. Every obstacle feels perfectly timed, as though reality itself is refusing to let him escape. At first, Truman tries to explain these events as coincidences, but eventually, he understands the terrifying truth. They are not coincidences at all. They are carefully orchestrated barriers designed to keep him trapped. His wife tries to calm him emotionally. His best friend reassures him that everything is normal. Every person around him gently pushes him back toward the comfortable illusion. But Truman is no longer the obedient man he once was. Something inside him has changed. He begins questioning even his deepest fears. As a child, he watched his father apparently drown during a sailing trip, leaving him with an overwhelming fear of the ocean. Now he realizes that even this trauma may have been deliberately manufactured to imprison him psychologically. At this point, Truman's greatest battle is no longer against the people controlling him. It is against the fear that has been planted inside his own mind. The film delivers one of its most powerful ideas here. You don't always need physical walls to build a prison. Sometimes fear itself becomes the strongest cage of all. Truman is no longer trying to escape only a city. He is trying to escape the invisible prison inside his own mind. And in doing so, an ordinary man begins reclaiming authorship over his own life, determined to pursue the truth no matter how dangerous the journey becomes. Truman has now reached the defining moment of his life. Only two paths remain before him. He can continue living forever inside a beautiful but artificial prison, or he can confront his greatest fear and discover the truth. He chooses the second path. One morning, he unexpectedly disappears, leaving the entire production in chaos. For the first time in the show's history, its star has slipped beyond the control of the people who have watched him every second of his life. Every hidden camera, every actor, and every member of the production team begins searching desperately for him. But Truman has finally learned how the system works. Quietly, he reaches the harbor, climbs into a small sailboat, and heads toward the very ocean he has feared since childhood. This is far more than a journey across the sea. It is a rebellion against the fear that has imprisoned him for his entire life. Watching from the control room, Christoph remains confident that Truman will eventually turn back. But when Truman refuses to stop, Christoph decides to weaponize nature itself. Violent winds roar across the water. The sky darkens. Lightning tears through the clouds. Towering waves crash against the tiny boat as a massive artificial storm is unleashed. Truman is thrown across the deck, injured, soaked, and pushed to the edge of death. Yet he never lets go of the sail. At this moment, the battle is no longer between a man and the sea. It becomes the final confrontation between freedom and control, truth and illusion, courage and fear. Christoph even orders the storm to become stronger, risking Truman's life rather than allowing him to escape. But something unexpected happens. The millions of viewers who once consumed Truman's life as entertainment begin fearing for him. They no longer want to watch a television show. They want to see a human being survive. Finally, when Truman comes dangerously close to drowning, Christoph has no choice but to end the storm. The winds fade. The sea grows calm. Exhausted, injured, and barely able to stand, Truman has nevertheless achieved something extraordinary. He has conquered the fear that had controlled him since childhood. Through this unforgettable sequence, the film delivers a timeless truth. The road to freedom is rarely safe. Sometimes the only way to reach reality is by facing your deepest fears, enduring unimaginable hardship, and risking everything. In that moment, Truman is no longer just a victim of manipulation. He becomes a symbol of the human spirit's determination to choose truth over even the most comforting illusion. The storm is finally over. The sea has become calm once again. But Truman's journey is not yet complete. Slowly, he continues sailing forward, convinced that somewhere beyond the horizon lies the real world he has spent his entire life searching for. Then, without warning, his boat slams violently into something invisible. For a brief moment, he cannot understand what has happened. Reaching out with his hand, he touches what appears to be the sky itself. In that instant, Truman discovers the greatest truth of his life. The endless horizon he believed was real is nothing more than the painted wall of a gigantic television studio. The sky is fake. The ocean is fake. The world in which he was born, raised, loved, married, and dreamed has always been an enormous artificial set. But this wall represents more than a physical barrier. It is the final boundary of the illusion that has imprisoned him since birth. Truman climbs out of his boat, walks toward a staircase built into the wall, and slowly reaches a simple exit door. Just as he prepares to leave, a voice echoes from the heavens. It is Christoph, speaking directly to Truman for the very first time. Calmly, he argues that the outside world is just as dishonest, cruel, and dangerous as anywhere else. He insists that everything he did was for Truman's own good, that he protected him from pain, fear, and uncertainty by creating a perfectly controlled life. Christoph genuinely believes he is not a villain, but a guardian. This leads to one of the greatest philosophical moments in modern cinema. Truman stands silently for a few seconds, looking back at the only world he has ever known. It offers comfort, familiarity, and safety, but never truth. Then, with a quiet smile, he bows gracefully and delivers his unforgettable farewell. In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. It is far more than a catchphrase. It is his final goodbye to an entire artificial existence. Without hesitation, Truman opens the door and steps into the unknown. The film ends at that exact moment, but its true message begins there. The audience never sees what lies beyond that door because that was never the point. The real victory is not where Truman goes. It is the fact that, for the first time in his life, he makes a choice that belongs entirely to him. He chooses freedom over comfort, truth over illusion, and self-determination over control. That is why The Truman Show remains one of the most powerful and unforgettable endings in cinematic history. It reminds us that sometimes the most frightening door is also the one that leads us to our real life. If you think The Truman Show is simply the story of a man escaping a fake world, then you've only experienced its surface. Beneath its simple narrative lies a rich exploration of symbolism, philosophy, psychology, and modern society. Let's begin with Sea Haven. At first glance, it looks like paradise. Clean streets, smiling neighbors, perfect weather, a life free from chaos. But that perfection is precisely what makes it unsettling. Real life is never perfectly organized. The film suggests that whenever a world appears too flawless to question, that may be the strongest reason to question it. Next comes Christoph. Even his name echoes religious symbolism. He speaks from the sky, controls the weather, creates the sunrise, commands the rain, decides the fate of everyone inside his artificial world. He behaves like a god. Yet there is one thing he cannot create: free will. That is the film's deepest philosophical argument. A meaningful life is not defined by perfect safety. It is defined by the ability to make your own choices, even if those choices lead to pain or failure. The ocean itself is another powerful symbol. Since childhood, Truman has been conditioned to fear it, not because it is dangerous, but because fear is the easiest way to build an invisible prison. When he finally sails across it, he is not only crossing physical boundaries, he is overcoming the fear that has controlled him his entire life. The final door represents truth, quietly asking whether we, too, may be living inside invisible systems we rarely stop to question. When The Truman Show was released in 1998, very few people could have predicted that it would become even more relevant with time. Social media did not dominate everyday life. Reality television was still in its early stages. People were not broadcasting their lives online 24 hours a day. Yet this film seemed to predict the future. It imagined a world where one person's private life could become entertainment for millions. Today, surrounded by smartphones, live streams, influencers, surveillance cameras, and recommendation algorithms, the film feels less like fiction and more like a warning. Every new generation discovers fresh meaning in its story because the questions it asks have only become more important. One of the film's greatest strengths is its extraordinary performances. Jim Carrey delivered one of the finest dramatic performances of his career. He captured innocence, vulnerability, hope, and quiet determination, allowing audiences to emotionally experience every stage of Truman's awakening. Equally remarkable was Ed Harris as Christoph. He never saw himself as the villain. He genuinely believed he had created a better, safer world for Truman. That moral complexity made him one of cinema's most unforgettable antagonists. The greatest triumph of the film is not simply that Truman escapes the studio. His true victory is that, for the first time in his life, he makes a decision that belongs entirely to him. From birth until that final moment, every relationship, every opportunity, every fear, and every emotion had been carefully written by someone else. But standing before that final door, Truman chooses something no script could ever predict. In that instant, he stops being a television character. He becomes a truly free human being. Perhaps that is why The Truman Show remains more than just a movie. It remains a question. Are we living according to our own choices, or according to a script written by society, media, fear, habit, and expectation? Truman made his choice. He chose uncertainty over captivity, freedom over security, truth over comfort, and that single decision transformed him from an ordinary man into a timeless symbol of human freedom. The film ends when Truman walks through the door, but its message begins the moment we look at our own lives and ask ourselves, am I truly living my own life, or someone else's version of it?